This YouTube is another promotion for the podcast on the Coastwatcher's memorial dedication on the 10th of August 2025. It features Brett Mason, former lecturer, former senator, former ambassador, and currently an author of note. And in this particular case, an author of a really interesting book on the saving of Lieutenant Kennedy by the Coastwatchers, which was why it was so suitable that Brett Mason be the MC for this day's activities. Now, an edited version of his speech is presented here, not the full speech. You need to go to the podcast to hear his words of wisdom. It's being overlaid of an incredible series of photos that were taken on the day that I thought deserved to be seen in the large format, not in the small format that will be found within the podcast. Thank you.
I think our collective prayers this morning have worked. We have a beautiful morning, so thank you for those prayers. My name's Brett Mason and I'm your MC for this morning's commemoration of Australia's Coastwatchers and celebration of the erection of a plaque in their honour just a few hundred metres away near the bank of the Brisbane River. And I'll invite you to take a look at the plaque just a little later. Ladies and gentlemen, if I might first, in the spirit of reconciliation, acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which we meet, the Turrbal and Yagara peoples, and in today's spirit of commemoration, acknowledge all those who have fought, served, and those who have died in Australia's name, especially, on this occasion, Australia's Coastwatchers. Out of the blue, I'd like to acknowledge on your behalf, you'll all be pleased that he's here, Professor Martin Hadlow, who is with the Solomon Islands Scouts and Coastwatcher Trust. You heard about our meeting this morning and turned up. And to those who assisted with the plaque to commemorate the Coastwatchers, John Gates, Brian Martin, Alison Early, Susan Peatfield and Peter Racy. And last, but certainly, ladies and gentlemen, not least, Dr. Betty Lee. Ladies and gentlemen, without Betty's deadly combination of charm and persistence, the city of Brisbane would still be without a memorial to the wartime contribution of our heroic Coastwatchers. These 600 men and as I am reminded, one very formidable woman, were brave, all of them. Ladies and gentlemen, 80 years ago this week, atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And this coming Friday, the 15th of August, it will be exactly 80 years since Japan's surrender was announced by the Emperor of Japan. So our commemoration this morning comes at an auspicious time. And in July of last year, we lost our last two Coastwatchers. Jim Burrows' vigil for his country ended at age 101, and coincidentally, Jim's fellow remaining Coastwatcher, Ronald Dixie Lee, passed away about 12 hours later, aged 100. Today, there are no Coastwatchers that we can thank and honour in person. But we are here today to honour their memory and their vital contribution to the Allied war, the Allied effort in the Pacific. Before satellites and before surveillance drones, ladies and gentlemen, it was the Coastwatchers that provided crucial intelligence about Japanese military movements and very often pre-warned of incoming attacks, which enabled the Allies to prepare for the attack. For example, in the Battle of Guadalcanal, which was a turning point of the war in the Pacific, Australian Coastwatchers gave the Americans 2 hours notice of the arrival of Japanese bombers. These were critical warnings in the opening stages of the battle and allowed the Americans to maintain their foothold on the island. Operating behind enemy lines, it was dangerous work. If Coastwatchers were caught, ladies and gentlemen, the best they could hope for was a quick death. As Naval Lieutenant Reg Evans, the Australian Coastwatcher who helped rescue the future US President, John F. Kennedy, and his crew of PT-109, he described it like this: a Coastwatcher's work is to sit in hiding like a spider, right in the web of the enemy, unseen and unheard. We became, said Evans, the eyes and the ears of the Pacific. Coastwatcher reports were crucial for the Allies during the Battle of the Coral Sea and the Solomon Islands and the Papua New Guinea campaigns. Description reads, they watched, they warned, they died, that we might live, lest we forget. And may I ask the Lord Mayor to commemorate this occasion, and also, Sarah, I think, to make a presentation. Lord Mayor.
Well, we're going to hand over to Betty to say a few words, but before I do, I just wanted to thank Brett Mason as well for your words. And I just had to say, every time I see Brett, I have to acknowledge Brett has been critical in giving both Nina and I a leg up in our political career. Both Nina and I at different times worked for Brett when he was a senator, and we absolutely love you, Brett, and thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please give Betty another round of applause. Thank you.